Mazel tov. Shabbat shalom. When I say the word faith, what do you think? Sometimes Jews are not so comfortable with that word. Like when we hear the phrase, the Jewish faith, we think it sounds a little weird. We prefer maybe Judaism, or we're more comfortable talking about the Jewish people. When we hear the word faith, we think about beliefs that don't have any proof, unscientific. Or we think about having to explain something about God, maybe the God that we don't believe in. So let me use a Hebrew word instead. When we use Hebrew words, we're more comfortable. Emunah. We like our concepts in Hebrew. I want to talk today about emunah and its related concept of bitachon, trust. But first, let's go back to our Torah portion. The spies, Daria gave great insights to us about the spies. It was my honor to study this Torah portion with her. Rabbi Shai Held writes, "What is the nature of the spies, and by extension the people's failure? Ultimately, the question posed by the text is whether what we imagine possible is limited to what we see before us, or whether we can discern possibilities not immediately apparent to the eye. In more traditional theological language, the challenge is whether to trust the bare word of God's promise or to have our vision limited by one of the observable realities before us. Note the ways that the majority report of the spies differs in the ways it doesn't from the position taken by Caleb and Joshua on the other. The latter do not dispute the facts communicated by their colleagues. They perceive the same threats and obstacles as the majority of the spies, but they trust God, who is with them and who will give them the land. The reader of the book of Numbers is invited to imagine herself as part of a new generation poised to enter the promised land. Will we see only what seems impossible and thus spurn God in the impossibility of genuine faith, of emunah? Or will we trust in God, have bitachon, and thereby discover the hope and possibility that God continues to make possible? So what is this faith and trust, emunah and bitachon, that this rabbi so eloquently writes about? I like the definition by the 20th century Orthodox rabbi, the Chazon Ish, interpreted by the contemporary Rabbi Daniel Stein. I paraphrase, emunah is the theoretical belief in the existence of God and God's governance of the world. Some kind of concept. There's a plurality of beliefs in Judaism, of options, but some kind of idea that there's something greater. While bitachon, this trust, is the ability to act in accordance with that belief. For example, a butcher who believes that his livelihood is ultimately provided by God, as a traditional example, has emunah. He knows that this whole world was given to us, that the meat that he butchers, the people that are there that pay for it, that all of this is ultimately given by God. That's emunah. However, if he panics when another butcher shop opens nearby, then he does not have bitachon. Bitachon entails the ability to remain calm in threatening situations, solaced by the knowledge that the outcome will be the inescapable will of God. Nevertheless, bitachon remains a function of emunah, and since emunah does not dictate absolutely favorable results, bitachon, trust, does not assume them. The spies in our Torah portion had emunah. They had faith. They knew that there was a God. They experienced God taking them out of Egypt. They heard God at Sinai. But they did not have bitachon. They could not face the uncertainty of the future. Uncertainty, change, the future makes us worry. But the medieval Rabbi Abraham Ibn Ezra writes, Ha'evar ayin ha'atid adayin ha'hoveh keheref ayin da'aga minayim. The past is no more. The future is yet to come. The present is a fleeting moment. Why worry? This is bitachon. I'm not saying that things are not going to go wrong. Things will go wrong in the future. But who defines what's wrong? I'm saying you can't control the future. You can live your life to the best of your abilities, but you are not in total control of the future. In traditional language, God is in control. You don't have to believe that literally to realize that at a certain point, the future is beyond our control. We can plan only so much, and then for the next step, you need bitachon. My teachers Alan Marinis and Avi Fertig write, worry can also show a kind of ignorance of the role of the divine in the world. As the ancient Rabbi Tarfon famously put it, it is not yours to complete the task, but neither are you relieved of the obligation to begin. Worry arises when we wish for a certain outcome and fear another. It's easy to recognize, then, that this mindset goes beyond fulfilling our obligation to act to the utmost of our ability and rests on the belief that the outcome is solely in our own hands. We are surely responsible for the quality of the actions we take, but beyond that, it is ignorance not to recognize how many forces beyond our control have a hand in determining the final outcome. The weather, the economy, a driver who runs a stop sign, somebody else's action, a power outage. So many factors that are beyond our control can influence how things turn out. Faithful and wise people act to the point that they have responsibility and then surrender, not out of fatalism, but in recognition of the truth that it is not yours to complete the task. I'm not saying that this is easy. Bitachon and emunah and bitachon, faith and trust, are hard. There's so much turmoil in the world. How do we trust a God that sits by while war ravages millions and babies die every day of disease? Bitachon, this trust, is not about denying that bad things happen to good people. It's about living with humility, knowing that you cannot control all outcomes. You are not in charge of the world. There is something bigger. And the universe, though, is set up in such a way that we can flourish. It takes work on our part, but it is not only you as an individual. Bitachon, trust, is facing the world with equanimity, with calmness. A parable told by Rabbi Yechiel Per, and he attributes the story to the Vilna Gaon. A king once had a ladder put up against a wall, and he said that whoever mounted the ladder to the top would get his daughter in marriage. Of course, all the soldiers were vying to be the first to run up the ladder. The first one was 2/3 of the way up, and when he hit the next step, it just opened up and he fell through. The step snapped closed again, and now the rest of them weren't running quite so fast. The second one went up a little more hesitantly, and he stepped gingerly on that step, and the same thing happened. It opened up, he fell through, and then it snapped shut again. Now no one wanted to try, until finally a fellow came along who ran very quickly up the ladder with a lot of power, and then he came to that step, he jumped with all his might to the rung above it, and he landed safely. It didn't open up, and he received the daughter in marriage. This parable tells us that although the king had made a trick step, he's seeking the one who trusts him enough to know that he's not just out to break everyone's leg. This is the one that the king wants for a son-in-law. Of course, it's a tricky thing to do. The next rung could have been booby-trapped, but not likely. The one who jumped, he figured out that the next step was going to be solid. How did he know that? Because he trusted that in the end, the king didn't want to break everyone's neck. Many might fall, but the trick rung was only there to reveal who was going to be the one who would conquer. We go up the ladder. Sometimes we jump, but we go one step at a time, and God is there to meet us. This is bitachon. Many of us are anxious about the future of the world. Maybe we're anxious about the future here in Ontario. And yet, we still love, we still create, we still teach, we still dance. These are all little steps of bitachon. We don't surrender to the heaviness of it all, and we don't drive ourselves to exhaustion by trying to control it all. Bitachon lessens worry and leads to equanimity. We should want to live with concern, not worry. We are concerned about the world around us, and we can do what we can individually together, little by little, to repair it. The Protestant thinker J. McDaniel writes, "Faith is not the intellectual assent to creeds or doctrines, but rather trust in divine love. To trust in love is to trust in the availability of fresh possibilities relative to each situation. To trust that love is ultimately more powerful than violence. To trust that even the galaxies and planets are drawn by a loving presence. And to trust that no matter what happens, all things are somehow gathered into a wider beauty. This beauty is the adventure of the universe as one." So, how can we cultivate this bitachon? My teacher suggests this contemplation. Reflecting your life, you could try this every once in a while. On Shabbat is a great time to do this. Reflecting your life on how much care you have recently received at the hands of the universe. And then trust that this is how life is and how it can be. Draw from the evidence of your own life the sound basis to have confidence. Bitachon. This is not to say that everything will work out as you want it to. Most of us do not want to die, and yet that is inevitable as well. But is it bad? Can we have confidence and trust even as we slip into the long night? Rabbi Yisrael Salanter described death as taking off an old overcoat. Even that can be seen to be as it should be. When you see and acknowledge the ways in which life is set up to support the processes of life, then that is a very affirming experience. Look for that in your own recent experience. Is it there? It must be. Let that direct experience feed your trust. Ha'avar ayin, ha'atid adayin, ha'hoveh keheref ayin, da'aga minayin. The past is no more. The future is yet to come. The present is a fleeting moment. So why worry? Shabbat Shalom.